Um, so I know this month is about motivations, man. It's about just the newness of life this new year. Many of us have made a bunch of goals and decided we were going to do a number of things in effort to solidify our journeys to try to be better people, better Christians, be better disciples, better in ministry, just better. And obviously, navigating this pandemic has been a challenge. Nonetheless, it's mediums like this that keep me going. So, with that stated, right, I changed this title at the last minute. So it wasn't like Alvin didn't post the right title because he really did. So motivated by perfection, a new way to love. But I really want to talk about it, love in the fast lane. And the reason why I want to talk about it in this way is because oftentimes, or not even oftentimes, we live in a very fast world. It's fast paced. Everything we do is fast. We want things right now. The way we watch TV is on demand, right? The way we order our food, we really don't even have to leave the house no more, right? Everything is in the palm of your hand, man. And tonight I want to talk about love, man, and I want to get to a place where we can be motivated by that. So let's rock and roll. All right, so let's open it up in the chat. How does love motivate you? Use the chat. In the chat, how does love motivate you in your daily life? And in the chat, what are some signs that show a person loves themselves? So those are the two questions. If you don't have access to chat in this moment, you can come off mute and you can share your answer. Nonetheless, if you do have access to chat, please tap in. So the question one is, being present. I like that, Sharice. That's really good. In the chat, how does love motivate you in your daily life? And again, in the chat, what are some signs that show a person loves themselves? Ooh, man. Sam, I feel like you have my PowerPoint already. That's awesome. Yeah, man, these some good answers, y'all. Yeah. Response, motivate. Yeah, I like that. Motivates me to do things sometimes I don't want to. Love is sacrificial, intentional, selflessness. Thank you, Mika. Gives me purpose, encourages growth. That's good stuff, Amber. Come on, man. The ladies is destroying y'all right now. Malcolm, where you at? Alvin, where you at? Milton, what's good? Come on. These ladies is killing us, just like they be killing us in the games. There you go. Good stuff, Mac. Appreciate that, brother. Alex, come on, man. I call y'all out. You know I will. All right, makes me move. Action word. We're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about the action word. Oh man, bro, you tripping. Okay. Never mind. So signs that a person loves themselves, shows discipline, sacrificial. Bro, I'm bullying you out of love, brother. I am bullying you out. All right, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Let's keep it moving. All right, so this has been a hot topic, man, all week. They've been sharing this. They've been sharing this picture all over social media, and the view that they shared was not suffice. It was whack. We was like, who made this? And they should be fired, right? But a lot of times it's just like love, man. When it comes to love, a lot of times we have to look at it through the right lens. And our perspective of love has to come from God. That is the only perfect place. Our view of love is skewed. So this is why, we see people in codependent relationships because their view of love is skewed. This is why people put up with abuse and people put up with trauma and infidelity and all of these other things and don't speak up when things hurt, and they don't say ouch when things hurt, because we have this skewed perspective, right? And a lot of times we have to be mindful of the fact that these generational curses, sometimes they're generational choices because we don't know how to love ourselves and we don't know how to love others, right? So a skewed perspective can make us think that we are experiencing love when in all actuality it might be lust, it could be abuse, it could be codependency, and most importantly, it could be neglect, right? So when we take a good gander at this, it's imperative that God is the originator of love, right? And so with him being the originator, with him being the curator of it, if you will, right? He has the power to say what the parameters of it is. And so we're going to look at First John chapter 4, verse number 16 through 21. And I've highlighted all of these words, all of the word love in this text. And we're going to count it as we go through. And so we know and rely, underline that word rely in your mind. And so we know and rely on the love, that's once, God has for us. God is love, twice. Whoever lives in love, 3 times, lives in God and God in them, right? So that in some of your texts, it may say abide, right? And so this is how love, number 4, is made complete, right? Love is a perfect action among us so that we will have the confidence on the day of judgment, right? Love removes fear, not just a temporal earthly fear, but it also removes this eternal fear. God never wanted us to live in fear in the first place. And so when we look at that, we see that we are like Jesus. In this world, we are like Jesus. So there is no fear in number 5, love, but perfect. Number 6, love drives out fear, because fear has to do with what? Punishment. And we're going to deal with that word punishment, and I underlined it for a reason. So stay tuned. All right. So we also see in this text that the one who fears is not made perfect in love, right? You're looking for completion. You're looking for completion in your friendships, in your relationships, in your marriage, and all of these things. Man, fear cannot exist. We can't be complete, right? And so when you say things like, oh, this person completes me, or this, you know, things of that nature, we got to be careful with phrases like that, right? Because God completes you. God has the ability to fill that void. And so let me be transparent for a moment here. So as I got older, matriculating through manhood, right? I always wanted this better relationship with my father, because from the age of like 13 to 18, my dad was out of the house. My parents were going through so many things. And so I felt like there was like this void. I had to figure out a lot of things trial by fire, right? You know, trial and error, figure it out on my own. Pretty much anything you could think of as a teenage boy, matriculating through manhood, right? I would typically try it on my own, fail, and then ask for advice later, right? And so when I as I got older and I became a father, right, I wanted to build this relationship with my dad, but the vision that I had in my mind of the void that I was missing from my dad was not the vision that he necessarily had. And so it wasn't until I started to depend on God to sustain me and fill that void as a father, fill that void as a husband, and not really being able to see that. Even now, y'all have heard me ask prayers, right? My son's a teenager, and I don't know what fatherhood looks like, because by the time I was 13, you know, my father was not necessarily consistently around. And so that idea of love oftentimes gets misconstrued, because in our minds, we have this vision of the void that we wanted filled, but God has a different idea. And so these things that you feel like you're defunct of or that you're absent of is not necessarily your fault. And there's not a person on this earth that's going to be able to fill that void, right? You can have the best friendships, you can have the best relationships, but until you depend on God to fill the void of love or things that you feel like you've been missing, it is until then that you'll be able to walk with that sense of confidence, rather than looking for the bottom to fall out of everything that you step into. And so he says, we love because he first loved us, right? So whoever claims to love God yet hates his brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen, and he has given us this command. Anyone who loves God must also love their brother and sister. So there's a lot of dynamics in this text, right? We see self-love in this text. We see love amongst brother and sister in this text. We see love for God in this text. We see lifestyle in this text. We see so many things in this text. And so let us deal with it really quickly. So when he says relying on God's love, so we must rely on God's love, but not just any love. I want to put that there. We got to rely on the love of God, okay? And so love is the reason why we have life and salvation. Nobody else can give us that but God. All right? Do we see that? Maybe a thumbs up somewhere, amen, somebody, something, right? God is the only one who can give us that. And so when we see this conversation between Jesus and Nicodemus, right? And he says, for God so loved the world in John chapter 3, verse 16, at the climax of this conversation between Jesus and this local official, if you will, right? It comes from a place of love, right? Because love is the reason why we have life and we have salvation. So what should God's love do? It should motivate us to treat people with kindness and mercy. It's the least we can do, right? He gave us life. He gives us salvation. The least I can do is treat my neighbor with kindness. But the key to relying on love is relying on the right kind of love, all right? So you can't love someone into loving you, man. Somebody don't want to love you. There ain't nothing you can do about it, right? And love must be followed by right choices and a lifestyle committed to loving that person. Does that make? I hope this is making sense. I really do. All right, so I'm gonna go back. Boom. Okay, so the text, John chapter 3, verse 16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. So that idea of relying on God is so very important. It's deeper than just praying to him when you're having a problem. It's truly abiding in his will and his way. And it says that I remain obedient no matter what, right? And so when we look at this idea of love, love should motivate us, right? And so he says to rely on his love. And if we rely on the love of God, in turn, it should transfer into how we love one another, right? Because the text in that chapter says, how can we love a God whom we have not seen, yet hate our brother? And so motivation, if you will, is a transitive verb, right? So it's characterized by having or containing a direct object, right? So many of us at the beginning of the year, right, we're trying to, get fit, right? That's the motivation, right? So the direct object is essentially us. So we make various choices, the things that we eat, or how often we go to the gym, things of that nature, right? Love motivates in a similar way. There has to be a specific object in which you are working toward or working for. And so the direct object is God. So his direct love for us should motivate us to love one another and live an obedient, abiding life, right? And so this motivation will sustain you even in those moments of being sacrificial, which say that, man, I really don't want to do this, but it's an effort for me to show who God is, okay? That's what it is. So when we forgive, what we're doing for people is showing them who God is. When we love people in spite of, we're showing them who God is, right? Because the text says, while we were yet sinners, right, Christ died. So when we look at that, it should be a motivator. Love should be a motivator. Love should be something that prompts us to say, you know what, I'm gonna let you make it. That's what love should do, right? There's a lot of times where, just like this quote from J. Cole, man, I swallow my pride, I'm cracking a smile, I'm dying inside, right? Because sacrifice in some regard will really take the top off of your pride and everything else within you. If you're going to be a sacrificially loving people, it's going to take some discipline. It's going to take some in spite of type action that says, you know what? Man, God did this for me. This is the least I could do for you. So we got to ask ourselves the question, what are we relying on? So at some point, no one is going to motivate you to love or treat people the right way. That's just the cold, hard truth. So it will be it'll be an intentional decision that you'll have to make or refuse to make. So the mistake we make is when we're motivated by things that make us feel good. Then we confuse them with love. And I believe everybody's been there before. right? We think that it's love, but it's not. We think that it's sacrificial, but it's not. We think that it's intentional, but it's not. And here's the problem. We put a lot of vested interest in potential. We rely heavy on this idea that people change. We rely heavy on the idea that maybe she'll get better. Maybe he'll get better. And what happens is, because we're in love with the potential, we don't hold folks accountable. And so instead of telling them, hey, that hurts, we'll say, well, I don't want to make them mad. I kind of, we're in a good place right now. Man, forget your good place, because essentially your good place can lead to codependence. And codependence will push you to missing out on something that God has for you by running after something that feels good. So if you're in a position in which you believe that behavior modification will keep people around, man, we're not children. We are adults. So Paul, the Ephesian writer, says that we may grow up in Christ Jesus, right? This ain't a classroom, and you're not my teacher. We are adults. I got to be able to be assertive in this season and say, you know what? That ain't cool. I got to be able to set boundaries, and those boundaries be respected. I got to be able to move in a way that says, this is the love of God, that I'm not going to intentionally hurt you and then turn around and say, well, I never meant to do that. Okay, well, it still hurts, and we still got some work to do to hopefully get back to this place of health, right? And so when we start allowing our behavior to be modified because we think it's going to keep somebody around, man, that's fear, right? And what did the text say, right? This idea of fear is a sense of punishment. You are torturing yourself by putting yourself in this position to where you believe, if I behave better, somebody's going to love me more. That's not love, man. That's not love. It takes a couple of folks to be assertive in this manner. And so when we look at this idea of it, it took me back to John chapter 14. Because he says, abide in me as I also abide in you, right? So this is a two-way street of abiding to show that I love God and he loves me. So Jesus answered him and said, look at the text, man. If anyone loves me, he'll do what? Keep my word. And my Father will love him and will come to him and make our home with him. Whoever does not love me does not keep my words, right? And so when we look at this text, there's something that sticks out here. It's accountability, because you see that word keep. When you keep something, you preserve it, you protect it, right? You walk in it. You do everything you can to ensure that it's protected, right? And so when we look at this motivation of who God is, right, the motivation behind God's love is offering salvation. His love runs deep, even so much so that he designated us as his children. He made a choice to love us. So the love becomes real and personal, because even in our sin, God sees us. So true love has nothing to fear. God has everything in control, y'all. And you gotta trust those you love, man. So what love does, what faith does, is it gives us victory over fear. And that's motivating, right? So when I walk into something and know that the victory belongs to God, I have nothing to fear. I can be honest. I can speak my truth. I don't have to overthink things, because I know that in my honesty, in my love, in my prayer, in my conversation to God, I know he's going to work everything out. And what's meant for me is meant for me. Everybody's afraid to lose things. Everybody's afraid to lose, and I've been there before, right? I just don't want to lose you. Well, losing somebody might be the best thing that could happen to your life. You know, sometimes we don't have space to gain people because we are so hell-bent on keeping people around that never should have taken up that space to begin with. And it's devastating, but it's interesting that the people that cause us the most harm, when we finally let go, we motivated. We're not living like we used to live. We living for God. We living out of faith and victory rather than behavior modification and fear. So, peep game. Love is honest, man. Love has no fear attached to it. Fear is a dishonest emotion, right? Because fear, it puts us in a position where we can't think. We can't be rational in a place of fear. So we do irrational things out of fear, right? And oftentimes we think those things look like love, right? But they're not. Really just sacrificing your well-being. And that's not fair. But sometimes our love, right, in quotations, our love for others will prompt us not to share how we're feeling about their actions. Right? Love is honest. Man, when something hurts, say it. Say it hurts. Man, listen, trust me, I go through it myself. And me and Al just had a conversation because I was struggling with really sharing how I was feeling about something. And sharing how I was feeling and being honest in that moment, what it did, it put me in a place to where I could actually set up boundaries. A lot of times it's not that we can't set up boundaries, it's the fact that we haven't voiced our frustrations and our concerns. We haven't been assertive. So it looks funny, right? If I'm not used to having fences up, and then all of a sudden I put a fence up, the first question I'm asking is, why are you putting a fence up, right? And it's like, well, your dogs keep coming into my yard. Why did you say something? Maybe I would have helped you build the fence. And then we both could have, understood this boundary. And so the thing is that if you can't be assertive, and I know I'm talking like this, but understand, man, I really didn't understand assertive communication until I was about 34 years old and in therapy. And so it's time that we work on it. So if your feelings aren't accepted, right? This is one of the things that I tell my youth and I tell some of the young folk. Man, your feelings are your feelings, right? They're your feelings. They belong to you. Shouldn't nobody be able to tell you how to feel? Now we can unpack it, right? But that's empathy, right? So I can unpack it with you. I can sit in it with you. I should be able to talk to you about it, right? But your feelings belong to you. If you're afraid, if you're frightened, if this is triggering, those are your feelings. Don't let anybody make you feel guilty about your feelings, right? So if your feelings aren't accepted and handled with compassion and empathy, then the relationship needs to be reevaluated. And I know that that's tough to hear, right? Because everybody was raised different. Everybody has a different outlook on life. But man, listen, when we take ownership of our feelings, now I can speak in an assertive tone, right? Jesus was super assertive, right? Peter, do you love me? Peter, do you love me? He was assertive. No, Peter, I'm not talking about that. Right? When those dudes fell asleep, when he was praying, y'all couldn't stay up for your boy, right? He was assertive. Jesus was a very assertive man because he understood love. And when you understand love, you can be assertive. It ain't about hurting people's feelings. It ain't about losing nobody. It's about walking with God. It's about living for God. And it's about having healthy folk around you that I shouldn't have to behave for because I'm afraid I'm going to lose them. Forget that. So the questions I want to leave on the table tonight, we're not going to answer these right now, but I just want you to think about them. What's motivating your love in this season? What's motivating you to be the loving person that you are? What's motivating your ability to pour into relationships? Is fear the motivator? Is love the motivator? Because if love is the motivator, it ain't confusing. You can share stuff. Y'all can rock. You can talk. Everything is set in place. I don't got to move chess pieces because I'm thinking about the way you going to move. Nah, I'm moving this way because I'm moving this way. And I'm moving in love. And when I'm moving in love, I don't have nothing to lose. I'm playing with house money, right? Because I'm playing with house money because God's love don't run out. His love does not run out. So that's it, man. We good. Hopefully something has been said. Oh man, hopefully something has been said that is encouraging, man.